hi there, food friends. It's Kevin.
And Marianne behind the camera.
And welcome to Cavalcade of Food. How you doing there, sis?
Good.
Good. Guess what? See the little Italian thing going on?
Uh-huh.
Today we are making homemade ravioli. And you know who requested this one?
Uncle Bob.
Yep. Uncle Bob, this is for you. We love you, and this one is your request. You know, Uncle Bob watches every week. He's not too crazy about the non-cooking videos, but he likes the cooking videos. And believe me, he'll tell you what he thinks. And he said, why don't you make homemade ravioli? So you know what? We're going to do it. And for you, Uncle Bob. And actually, this apron is from a friend of mine who went to Italy a few years ago, brought it back as a souvenir. So, we're going to make ravioli, cheese ravioli, and of course ravioli can be filled with all kinds of things, Marianne, from the traditional, which is a ricotta cheese filling, or a meat filling, or, you know what, I've had it filled with lobster, and other yummy things, or vegetables like squash and stuff like that. So, you know, ravioli is sort of the Italian kind of dumpling, if you want to think about it. You know, a pocket of, almost every culture has something like this, right?
Right.
And the ravioli is the Italian version. So, we're going to make, we're going to start with making the dough. And, boy, you ask 10 Italian cooks the best way to make dough, and you know how many answers you'll get?
10.
12. Okay? I mean, it's unbelievable. Everybody has a different approach. So, if you make homemade pasta dough, if you make pasta from scratch, and it really is wonderful, when you make it homemade, let us know. And everyone has their own method. But here's one thing that is fairly common. In making pasta dough from scratch, there are two different flours that people use, or a combination of the two. And one is called a 00 flour, okay? And the other one is called semolina flour. Now, some people have told me that in northern Italy, they tend to make their pasta with just the 00. And in southern Italy, they tend to use a combination of 00 and semolina. And you know the pasta you buy in the supermarket, Mare, the dried pasta, right, in the box? That, if you look at it, and you look at the ingredients, it's generally made with semolina flour. Semolina flour and water is often just what they use to make that pasta. And we'll talk about the difference. But this is going to be an egg pasta, which means we're not going to just use flour and water. We're actually going to use flour, eggs, a little salt, and a little olive oil.
No water.
No water, okay? The only time I might throw some water in is when I'm kneading. If the dough seems particularly dry, I might sprinkle in a little water, although I'm more apt to sprinkle in a little extra olive oil because I like that better. So, you ready?
Ready.
All right. Nothing to it but to do it. So, Marianne, remember I mentioned the two flours, right?
Right.
Let's show our friends. How's that?
Good.
Okay. This is the semolina flour. Semolina flour is a coarser style ground flour. And the idea of using semolina flour, especially for the dried pastas that you buy in the store, is that the coarser flour helps create sort of this craggy exterior. And you know why you'd want that?
So the sauce will stick?
Exactly, to adhere to the sauce. The same reason why, you know, you put little ridges sometimes. You see ridges on pasta, right? Like penne and other things, rigatoni. It's for the pasta to cling to it. And then we have this 00 flour here. Now this 00, that 00 refers to how it's milled, and this is like a powder, okay? Super soft, super silky, very fine. And that is going to give you a more delicate, okay, but silky sort of consistency to the pasta. So some people just use 00, and some people use more semolina, but we're using a combination of the two. And here's the ratio: about 55 or 60% 00 and 40 or 45% semolina. Okay? So this recipe calls for 2 cups of flour, or the best way to measure flour, honestly, and most things, you know what this is, Toots?
The scale.
Yep, it's a scale. Now, it wouldn't hold you or me, but this is a scale that you weigh in, a kitchen scale that you weigh ingredients. If you do a lot of baking and a lot of cooking, these are not that expensive and they're a worthwhile investment, okay? Because the most accurate way to measure is by weight, all right? When you have a cup like this, right, we say 2 cups of flour.
Yeah.
Well, how do you fill the cup? Do you scoop it? Do you spoon it? Is it completely level? A lot of things come into play. Is the flour been stored in a humid area and the flour, you know what I mean, is expanded a little bit? Whatever. So, if you don't have a kitchen scale, you want 2 cups of flour, and you'd want a kind of a sort of a heaping-ish cup of 00 and sort of a scant cup of semolina, okay? And that'll get you about the right ratio. If you don't, you can just use 00, or if you don't have either of them and you can't find these flours, they don't have them in every supermarket, I'll tell you. If you live close to an Italian store, of course, they would have it, or a lot of bulk food stores might have it, but you could just use an unbleached white all-purpose flour, okay?
Okay.
So, if all else fails, just use that. Also, I'm doing this by hand, which sometimes is called the granny method. You know why they call it that, Mayor? Because this is the way Italian grandmas have been doing this for generations, okay? By hand. Because that's just the way you did it, because that's what you had. You had your hands. And by the way, best kitchen tools right here, and I washed them before we get started, as I always do. You want to have clean hands. You want to have a clean work area. If you have a countertop that you can use it. This is a Formica countertop, so I like to use a wooden board instead. But if you have a granite or a marble countertop, that's a beautiful work surface. I'm just stirring this flour around, okay? Mare, see that?
Yeah.
But this is to say I'm doing it by hand. You could do this in a food processor, okay? If you have a food processor, you can do the mixing in the food processor, okay? Basically bringing the dough together. All right? You're going to have to knead it by hand, but you can do the mixing in a food processor and it'll be fine. So don't feel like you have to do this by hand. Or if you have dexterity issues and you have a food processor, use it. Okay, I've got my flour in here, which is about 2 cups, or like I said, 240 grams. I'm going to put in like a teaspoon of salt. Okay, you want a little salt in that pasta. All right, now I'm going to just dump this in a mound here on the board. Okay, then I'm going to make a well, Mare. Now here's where a measuring cup comes in handy. Check this out. See that nice well I just made?
Yeah.
Okay. And to this well, we're going to add 3 large eggs. Here's the other thing. Not all eggs are the same. Even eggs that are in the same carton, right? You'd think, oh, all 12 of them are large. They're exactly the same. No. Every chicken doesn't lay the exact same egg. It means that they fall within a parameter of size, okay, that is designated as large. But some eggs there may be more egg in the egg, and some might have less egg in the egg, and it's a little smaller. So whatever it is, you want 3. Yes, you want to be sure you can weigh your eggs out if you want. And there's even formulas for doing that. Anyways, we're going to crack our 3 eggs into this well. And the reason we make the well, Mare, is because if we didn't, the eggs would be running all over the place. Who wants that, right?
Right.
Okay, so to these 3 eggs, I'm going to add just a little bit of olive oil, okay? Let's call that about a tablespoon, okay? Now, fork, right? We're going to just do this. We're going to beat these eggs up first in the well. Break those yolks and get them mixed. You could beat the eggs up a little ahead of time in a bowl if you wanted to. But this is how all the grandmas did it, so this is how I'm doing it. Again, all of this and what I'm doing now you could do in a food processor. But if you do it in a food processor, put the eggs in first and then the dry ingredients on top. It'll mix better, okay? All right. So I would say I have the eggs pretty well beaten here. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to pull in with my fork some of this flour mixture. Okay? Basically, we want to keep pulling in the flour until we have sort of a semi-solid mixture here that isn't going to blob out all over the place like this guy here. Okay? I'm just going to slowly mix it in. This just takes time. But as it thickens, see how it's thickening, Mare?
Yes.
Keep pulling in that flour. Keep pulling in that flour to make the dough. Okay. Now you see how it kind of stands on its own?
Yeah.
Once you get to this point, and it's not going to run off the board, now we're going to switch tools. Okay? You know what this is? Right?
Bench scraper.
Bench scraper. You are correct, Missy. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to our bench scraper, and we're going to now, we can kind of do this in a little bit bigger fashion. And we're going to mix this dough up like so. Again, next time I make pasta for the channel, Mare, remind me I'll do it in a food processor. It is a step saver. But you know what? Not everybody has a food processor. But again, there are some real basic tools that are good investments, like that digital scale, food scale. Excellent investment. You can get one for $15, $20. Good one. Or this bench scraper. This is like $5, okay? And it's handy for so many things. I use it all the time. Okay, now our dough has really kind of come together, and it's sticky, okay? And your impulse is going to be, oh gosh, it needs more flour. Don't do that yet, okay? It's going to be sticky. Let it be sticky, okay? But we got to start kind of kneading this flour a little bit, because we need to develop our gluten. And if you find after you kind of move it around a little bit that it's still too wet and sticky, then you can add a little flour, okay? But I mean, add flour. I'm going to add 00 flour, like a teaspoon at a time, all right? You don't want to over-flour the dough, okay? And as you knead it, it will become more and more manageable. But yes, it's going to be wet, it's going to be sticky when you start off. Okay. Well, honey, so I probably, in my mixing here and beginning to knead, I probably added maybe about 3 teaspoons of 00 flour just to help it kind of better come together and not be so wet. Let's show our friends what I'm doing now. Now we are doing the knead. And what I'm doing is basically with my thumb, I'm pulling up a little bit of that dough and pressing in with the palm of my hand and turning, okay? And this dough, it needs to be kneaded, okay? It's still a little on the sticky side, but this dough has to be kneaded for 10 to 12 minutes. So I've got my eye on my watch. Again, if you get stuck, get your bench scraper out. I'm going to put a little flour there. Okay. And it's just something you have to do, like so many things in the kitchen, Mare, by feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a very different kind of dough than bread. All right? It's not the same. It doesn't feel the same, and it doesn't act the same. But we want to keep it moving here, like I said, for 10 to 12 minutes until it sort of gets nice and silky smooth. You can see it's still kind of craggy. But as you continue to knead this dough and work it, it'll get softer and silkier on the surface. Again, I'm just sort of pulling a little piece and then bringing it over and turning it as I go. So we will not have our food friends sit here and watch me knead this dough for the next 8 minutes or so, but I just wanted to kind of show people the process. Again, if it's feeling really sticky and it's sticking to the board, then just, again, a little flour at a time, so that you can kind of keep this kneading process going. Let that work in there. Okay? Okay, honey. How's that?
Good.
So, something that you can do is give it a little push. See how it springs back? I'll do it again.
Yep.
That's what you want. Okay? You want that elasticity. Now, because it's so, I worked it, man. Okay? I worked that dough. It has to rest because when you go to roll it out now, it'll just spring back. Do you know what I mean? And retract, which is not what we want. So I'm going to wrap it up because you don't want this to dry out. I'm going to wrap it up in some plastic wrap, and it's got to rest for at least a half an hour. Okay? Now, you could also, if you didn't have that, some people just put a bowl over it. Either way is good. But I'm gonna have it rest here. Now, while the dough is resting, we're going to work on our cheese filling for the ravioli. Well, we've assembled the ingredients for the cheese filling, and we've put our filling together since we're waiting on our pasta dough to sort of rest up a little bit. Here's what I'll say about ravioli filling, and I talked a little bit about it at the start. Possibilities are endless. You can keep it traditional with ricotta cheese filling, which is what we're going to do. But you could certainly, I've had a lot of really yummy meat fillings with, Italian sausage and other things. As well as, like I said, lobster, crab, all kinds of yummy stuff. So a lot depends too on like the sauce that you're going to use and things like that. So we're just going to do a tomato sauce on these, and so we really like the cheese ravioli with the tomato sauce, don't we?
Yeah.
So let's show our friends what we've got for our filling here. Okay, so here's the bowl, all right, and we're going to put in about a pound of ricotta cheese, okay? Now, when you go to the store and you get the ricotta cheese, every different brands, or if you buy it fresh from a deli or an Italian market, it'll vary on how wet it is. And depending on what you're doing with it, it might be okay. But for the ravioli filling, Mayor, I always like to get as much of the excess moisture out of the ricotta as I can. So to that end, I put it in a strainer a few hours ago. And look here, you see that?
Yeah.
That's the whey, okay? That's some of the excess liquid that has come out of the cheese. So now I took that liquid out. I'm going to put a little liquid in because I'm going to add an egg. And the egg's function here is going to be sort of a binder. So let me just beat this egg up a little bit in the bowl. Okay? Then we're going to put in our cheese. There it is. Okay. Then we're going to add a little green, Mare. I got some fresh flat leaf parsley here. Now, when I make ravioli, I like the cheese filling with parsley. But when we do stuffed shells, what do I use?
Spinach.
Spinach. You could use spinach here if you wanted to, but I like to use, if you had a little spinach, you can use it. I like to use parsley. I don't even know if I'll need all of this, honestly. A little parsley, but it just brightens it. I love the little green color that it gives. And, of course, the flavor of parsley. And to me, the parsley filling with the ricotta, to me, just reminds me of the raviolis we had when we were kids. And we'd go to the Italian restaurants. Dad loved Italian food, didn't he, Mare?
Yeah.
Well, Mom did too, but Dad really loved it. So, all right. So, here's some parsley. Let's got my bench scraper. Let's put about half of that in the mix and see how it looks. We can always put more in if we want, okay? How's that?
Good.
Then you got to put some salt and pepper in here. So we're going to put in some pepper. Going to sprinkle in just a little salt. And then, you know what I got in here, Mir?
Parmesan cheese.
Fresh Parmesan cheese. And we're going to put in maybe, and I'm eyeballing it here, a quarter cup or so. I like the sharpness. You know, the ricotta cheese is very mild, very plain, bland, which is why we salt it and why it's good to put in a little something with a little sharpness, like the Parmesan. So let's call that about a quarter of a cup, okay? Now, we will blend all that together, and we will have our filling for our ravioli. All right, Toots, it's rolling time. So we've got our dough. It's been resting for about 35 minutes. You could let this rest up to an hour if you wanted to. You could even put it in the fridge and deal with it the next day if you wanted to make it in advance. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my dough scraper and I'm going to cut the dough in half. And this other half we're going to keep wrapped up, okay? Because you really don't want this to dry out. Put that over here. Now, what I want to do is, put a little flour on my hands. I want to flatten this out into a disc, okay? So, you know what this is, Mare?
Pasta roller.
Pasta rollers. Look familiar?
Yes.
It was Mom's. So, if you have one of these, great. If you have one of these, then you probably don't really need to watch this video because it means you're probably already making your own pasta. If you think you want to invest in one of these machines, then because you want to make your own pasta, but then by all means you should. And I don't know what these machines are going for because one, I've got Mom's and I've got another one that I bought in an estate sale, I think for $5 or $10. So I don't know what they cost new, honestly. You know me, I'm secondhand Rose over here. But you can also do this with a rolling pin, okay? So if you don't have the pasta roller, don't worry about it. You can do it with a rolling pin. Or if you have a KitchenAid mixer, they make an attachment for the KitchenAid Mare that is basically a pasta roller and cutter. So that's another option if you have one of these. All right, I've flattened this dough out. I'm going to just give it a little flour because I don't want it to stick as it goes through, okay? So when you use this gizmo, you always start with the widest opening, okay? And then you progressively make it thinner and thinner. So right now, it's on 1, which is the widest, okay? And I use a piece of parchment here just as give me that. We're going to get this dough, and we're going to put it through there, okay? Then look what I'm going to do, Mare. I'm going to fold it. And the reason I'm doing this is because we're trying to create a rectangular shape, all right? So let's go through that opening again, okay? Let's get in there. Rectangle again. Okay, little flour, again, so it doesn't stick to these rollers here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is we're going to take it down to the next one, which is a 2, okay? So that's going to squeeze it out even a little thinner. Now, I generally will put this through each one twice. Whoop. And the handle will fall off because you have to kind of push the handle in. Okay, so you with me, Mary?
Yeah.
All right. Now I'm going to the 3 setting. And here we go. All right. And we're going to this is kind of a two-handed job here. All right. Now I'm going to go all the way to 6. So I got to do 4, 5, and 6, and you can't skip when you do this machine. You got to go in each one. Okay. So Mary, we are now at 5. You see how long this thing's getting?
Yes.
So if it gets much longer, something you can do is just cut it in half. Okay? Once it gets, I was going to go to 6, but honestly, I'm liking the 5 here for the ravioli. You don't want it too thin for the ravioli. So, all right, you see this, Mare? We're going to stop there. Now, kind of fold the dough in half like so. Okay? And then you see where your halfway point is. Okay? You with me?
Yep.
So, remember we marked the halfway point, and I'm going to double check because it sort of disappeared. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. We've got our filling here. So we are going to start like this. Put a good inch apart, each one. Okay? You can make these as big or as small as you want. That is up to you. They also make these like ravioli forms or trays. I don't know if you've ever seen those, Mare. But they like have little holes in them, and you put the dough over them, and
Yeah.
okay. So we don't have that, but all right. So we've got our filling in. So now I've just got some water here, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to just press around all the edges and down the middle with just a little bit of just water. Just going to moisten here. Go around. Okay. Now, here we go. we are going to lay this out. I'm going to do the top side first. I'm going to stretch. And we'll do this side. But what you want to do, too, is get those air bubbles out of here. Okay? Well, that's sometimes the hardest part. You want to squeeze any of that excess air out as you seal. Kind of want a tight form. Around these. Get that air out. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut them. I'm going to try to make them pretty. I'm going to go around the edge first with this. If you don't have one of these, you are okay. You know what you can use, Mare, instead?
What?
A pizza cutter. Pizza wheel.
Yeah.
Works just fine. You see why I do this on parchment too. So I'm going to pull this off. But if you want the scalloped edge, I think it just kind of looks nice. Then use one of these. Okay. Then, see why I do this on parchment? And we've got here. And then we cut it in half. And then I go around again and try to seal. Now, I'm going to take some semolina and put it on this tray. Okay? And that's just so that it doesn't stick to the tray. And, you know, all of these are going to look a little different. But what do we always say about homemade stuff, Mare? Right? If you want things to all look the same, like it came out of a factory, then go buy them. But if you want things to look homemade, because they are, and you know what? Sometimes not everything is uniform. Okay. This is your chance, too, to give it one last little seal, if you see anything. To stick for me. There. Okay. Now, I've still got the other half of dough. So how many we got here? 4, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we should get about 20 out of this, give or take. Okay? All right, honey, it's time to cook. Here, let's show our friends. We got 20 ravioli from this batch. I think that'll be enough for you and me, don't you? Don't you?
More than enough.
More than enough, so maybe we'll have lunch tomorrow, even better. Okay, I've got a pot of boiling water here. You know what I'm putting in, Mare?
Salt.
Some salt. We always want to salt our pasta water. Okay, now I'm saying a silent prayer because I hope these will be okay and not break when they go into the water. And I'm already, I should have put these on parchment. It's giving me a hard time here. Okay. So we're going to do these in small batches. Do not crowd the pot. So 6 or 8 at a time is great. And you don't want it on an aggressive boil. Bring that water up to a boil, and then you can take it down. And, you know, we don't want them to stick together. So I'll put one more in there in this batch. Okay? So we'll cook these. They won't take long. You know, fresh pasta cooks much quicker than dried pasta. If you think about it, Marianne, the dried pasta is dry. It's been completely dehydrated. So, you know, you're starting with something that's hard that you want to cook until it's tender. This is already, our pasta here is already nice and soft. So we're going to just let these cook. As they cook, they will float up to the top because we're cooking the pasta and we're cooking the filling. And then, you know what, we've got a nice tomato marinara sauce to go on top. I'm not doing a sauce recipe here. I've done one in the past. I'll do some more in the future, I'm sure. You probably have your favorite recipe for a tomato sauce, or, you know what, some people, Marianne, they have their favorite brand that they like to buy already made. So whatever the case may be, you go ahead and use the sauce of your choosing. We've got a nice marinara here that we're going to have with our ravioli. I'm taking out our ravioli and putting them on a paper towel that is or a platter lined with paper towel, just to get some of this water off of them. Let them dry. You could also put them on a rack or something. So did you see how they were all floating on the top?
Yeah.
So once they come up to the top and start floating, and the pasta is nice and tender, they're done. I'm going to put the next batch in, and we'll be back. So, honey, what do we think of that?
It looks good.
Nice looking, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, I got 6. That ought to be good for starters, don't you think?
Yes.
Okay, I've got our marinara here. I'm going to put over. You know, people have different thoughts, too, about sauce and how much you should put. Some people like things a little saucier. Some people like them lighter. Now, bring it down. So, how about, you know what would make this even better? A little freshly grated Parmesan. Okay? Now, we need the right tool. In this case, it's a fork. Let's see. Now, this looks nice. So, I can already tell cutting into it. That pasta mare is so nice and tender. Let's get a shot. Can you see the inside of that ravioli?
Yeah.
Uncle Bob, this is for you, baby. Oh, delish. That is good. And, the pasta, like I said, tender. That cheese filling, really yummy, Mara. I know, and you're thinking, well, when am I going to get some? We're almost done. So, homemade ravioli. I might next time, I stopped at a 5, I might go take it to a 6. If I think the ravioli will hold, it'll be an experiment. I'd love to have it just a wee bit thinner, but not at the expense of them falling apart, right? So it's always a balance. But anyways, ooh, that's good. And I want to get back into eating this. But again, Uncle Bob, thank you for the inspiration. And we hope you are well. And you're always in our thoughts, hearts, and prayers. And we say the same thing about our food friends, and I'll say the same thing about my sister for working that camera. Thanks, Toots.
You're welcome.
And we hope everybody's doing great. We hope everyone's having a wonderful holiday. Are raviolis a holiday dish? Yeah, they can be. They're certainly special when you make them from scratch, aren't they, Mare?
Yes.
And we just hope you're celebrating with people you love this holiday season, because that's what it's all about. Family, friends, and great food. Mare, let's tell them the old website.
Cavalcadafood.com.
Right on. And the recipe is in the description below. And we thank you for watching, and we hope you'll come back and join us again real soon, right back here on Cavalcade of Food. Bye, everybody.
Bye.